This is VOA News. I'm Steve Norman. U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee and lawyers for the woman who was accused a high court nominee of sexual assault continue their back and forth over her possible testimony. More now from AP's Tim McGuire.
Psychology professor Christine Blasey Ford says Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her when they were both teens, an accusation he denies, but one that has hobbled the Republican push for his confirmation. On Friday, President Trump tweeted that if the episode was as bad as she says, Ford or her loving parents surely would have reported it. Maine Republican Senator Susan Collins, a key to Kavanaugh's confirmation, calls Trump's remark appalling.
I think it was a disservice to Dr. Ford and likely a disservice to Judge Kavanaugh.
At a rally in Missouri, Trump said Kavanaugh is like someone out of central casting.
He was born for the U.S. Supreme Court. He was born for it. And it's going to happen.
Tim McGuire, Washington.
Head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Charles Grassley, has tweeted Ford will have the time her attorneys have requested in order to consider whether to proceed. China has canceled trade talks with the U.S. following Washington's imposition of new tariffs on Chinese goods. The Wall Street Journal reporting Beijing had planned to send its vice premier to Washington next week for those talks. The U.S. was optimistic about finding a way forward in trade talks with China. Turkey is signaling its readiness to use force against radical groups in the Syrian Idlib enclave, part of a deal struck with Moscow. Critics of the deal insist Moscow has trapped Ankara into committing itself to remove or eradicate radical groups, which carries with it a risk of conflict with jihadis. This is VOA News. British Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit blueprint was in tatters after the European Union rejected it at a summit, and a move to the UK media branded a humiliation. Prime Minister spoke about what had happened.
At this late stage in the negotiations, it is not acceptable to simply reject the other side's proposals without a detailed explanation and counter-proposals. So we now need to hear from the EU what the real issues are and what their alternative is, so that we can discuss them. Until we do, we cannot make progress.
May's plan also faces opposition from pro-Brexit members of her own Conservative Party who disagree with her plan. World Health Organization reporting substantial progress is being made in containing the spread of the Ebola virus in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. It also warns new hotspots are appearing. Lisa Schlein reporting now from the WHO in Geneva.
WHO spokeswoman Fadela Shaib tells VOA there is significant risk that Ebola could spread there, and health workers have to remain on top of the many challenges facing them. Among the challenges is a growing resistance in some communities to measures used to contain the virus. For example, Shaib says some people are reluctant to go to treatment centers for care. Others are unwilling to change traditional burial practices, such as touching the bodies of those who have died from Ebola. WHO warns this is one of the surest ways of spreading the infection. The outbreak in the DRC is the 10th since Ebola was first identified in 1976. Lisa Schlein for VOA News, Geneva.
Brazilian police have arrested a Lebanese man whom the United States suspects is one of the major financial backers of Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant group. The U.S. has described Asad Ahmed Barakat as a global terrorist. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has denied allegations by the New York Times. He suggested President Trump be secretly recorded or be removed from office. We get details now from AP's Eric Tucker.
During a conversation last year, a tense conversation that occurred, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein discussed the idea of secretly taping President Donald Trump as a way to expose the chaos in the White House. It's really important to note, though, that there are differing accounts as to the nature of this type of comment. There are people who say that Rosenstein made the comment in a moment of frustration and he meant it sarcastically as a joke. There are other people who disagree with that assertion, and so we are left with sort of conflicting accounts of what was a difficult conversation in the heat of a lot of turmoil and upheaval.
AP's Eric Tucker. I'm Steve Norman, VOA News.